Hi everyone, and welcome back to Venus Pages. Today we're talking about Holy Sonnet 10, Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. This is another summary and then a line-by-line analysis video for the Edexcel A-Level English Literature Poetry curriculum. Death Be Not Proud is another apostrophe, another addressal, but this time it's not addressed to God, it's actually addressed to death. As Donne moves forward and becomes older, the focus shifts in the Holy Sonnets away from that theme of redemption and salvation and am I good enough, will God forgive me, to kind of saying, yes, I'm sure God will forgive me because God is all loving and all merciful, and actually, it's not God that I should be scared of, and I should not be scared of anything, and death should be scorned instead. So this is making Donne's feelings known towards death. And again, it's kind of in line with the theme of Donne's confidence as a poet, that same arrogance and pride that we have seen in The Sun Rising, where we have scorned the sun for waking up the two lovers, and he addresses a being that is so much more powerful and says, well, actually, no, you're not that powerful. So here we see the same thing but to death this time. It's another 14-line poem, another ABBA, CDDC, structure. This poem is much more straightforward with its themes of redemption and salvation than perhaps some of others that Donne has written in this series. Less biblical references to understand. So let's move on to the analysis then. Death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou think'st thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. Death, he addresses it directly. Don't be proud. Death is the first word. It highlights that death is the focus of this poem, but also it highlights that this is a direct address to death, and he's not scared to let death hear it. He's not scared, as was the superstition of the time, to talk about death because death might come. Instead, he directly scorns it. He says, yes, come as you may, I am not scared of you in the least. He instructs it with this imperative of don't be proud. It's a monosyllabic, really clipped first line. It's an order, really. And then he explains it because though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, thou art not so. So although people think that you're mighty and dreadful, although people think that you're this force to be feared, that you're this great power, that you're to be respected to and paid diligence and diligence and deference to, this is not the case for me. This is not true. You are not like that. It's not even a question, it's an assertion. You are not like that. It's saying, I know you, and I know that you are not great. I know that you are under some false pretense. And it's a spondy, be not proud, before it, then an iambic. Some have called thee, some is emphasized to highlight that it's not me, it's anyone else but not me. I am not included in the sum. I do not view death as almighty. It's a very big contrast. It's again that us versus them moment in Donne's poetry to say, I am not like the rest. I see that death is not proud. I am not like the rest. I deserve to be judged by God, or I am willing to repent. So it's something very personal. And the reason that he gives is actually because those who you think you may easily overthrow, thou thinkst thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. So you think that you can so easily get rid of people at the wave of your arm, but that's not true because they don't truly die. Instead, he calls death poor rather than mighty. It's a very big contrast to the adjective of mighty. It's to say that I pity you because you live in your false expectations. You live in delusion that you think that you actually kill us. The addressing of death as thou, it again highlights the very intimate terms that Donne is on with death, but whereas for God, it's intimate because he thinks that God is the only person who can understand him. God has seen his very soul. For death, it's intimate because he has no respect for him. And there's something very taunting here, and when we get that end stop line, it's like an added sense of finality. It's like he says, yes, I pity you. And that's that. And he walks away. So it's a very marked stop. It's a very marked exclamation that no, this is it for you. You are not as powerful as you think you are. It's a very declarative statement that you can't kill me, and it's very certain. And the reason for that certainty is expressed in the next stanza. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure, then from thee much more must flow, and soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Rest and sleep are but your pictures, and yet from them we derive much pleasure. So he's saying if rest and sleep are just death, that idea of rest and sleep being a liminality because you're on the threshold of conscious and unconscious. That idea that it's something like death, because when you sleep, you're not aware of anything, and maybe that's what death is, just like a blankness, an emptiness, a darkness. But he says, and yet we derive pleasure. So they're images of you. So shouldn't it be something more? Shouldn't we have that same fear? But no, people so eagerly go to bed, people so eagerly derive pleasure from sleeping. So it shows that you're not as powerful as you think you are. And soonest even our best men go. So even our best noble minds eventually pass away. So even our most noble people die, but yet they go with you. And yet we remark them going and they do not express this fear. It's a loss for us, but it's not a loss for them. Because their bones rest, but their souls deliver. Their souls are delivered to heaven where they came from. From thee must flow. So this is likely a reference to Sharon and the river of death crossing. So from thee must flow, that image of a river. So you help them cross this river, you help them cross onto the other side, onto the world of the dead, from the world of the living. You help rest their physical body, you help rest their physical soul, physical bones, and then you complete their journey by delivering their souls either to heaven, to the afterlife, to the good afterlife, or to hell. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and doth with poison, war, and sickness dwell, and poppy or charms can make us sleep as well. And better than thy stroke, why swell'st thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. There is then a wider and more universal point, how death serves as an equalizer. It's slave to fate, chance, kings, desperate men. So death is almost not the one in control through this asyndetic list. Fate is, someone is unlucky enough to cross the road at the wrong time and get trampled by a horse. Kings order someone to die when it's not their time to die. Or maybe desperate men, so men who have had enough and who decide to commit suicide. And notice also that Donne actually explicitly makes that reference. It's not at all veiled. So he is willing to talk about this taboo topic as he was in life, when he was just an average man and not a preacher. So he really manages to retain those values of his that he carries through his entire life, even when he moves into a position of higher religious authority, like being Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral. You are associated with poison, with war, with sickness. You live with them. And yet Poppy, like opium or charms, so certain, I don't know, magic spells can help us dwell well, so can help us rest well. Magical cures can make us lose consciousness, the same as you, indeed better than thy stroke, even better than you. So why swellst thou then? So why are you so proud if a simple drug or opium derived from poppies can help us achieve that state between consciousness and unconsciousness, can help us reach that liminality, and we don't even have to wait for you to come. You are not this major liberator. You are simply slave to external circumstances like kings, the will of kings, so the will of men, our will. Here on earth it is not you who is in true power, but us. Because really, even if you do come, and even if it is you who claim us, it's just one short sleep past, we wake eternally. We sleep just for a moment. In the grand scale of the eternal lives that we will lead when we are resurrected, it's just a single moment to die briefly. We come to a new heavenly life, and in that new heavenly life, death is no more. You are no more. You're but a temporary influence. The true eternal influence is God and God's will. Now we live with you, death, towering over us, but in the grand scheme of things, you're nothing. And we have this anaphora and this repetition of and. It adds to that sense of and. There's more. There's a continuity. And death shall be no more. And better than thy stroke. And poppy or charms. And dust was poison. It's to show that there is a continuation here. It doesn't end with this single moment. Then to end with this line that death you are no more. That there is no and for you, death. That death thou shalt die. It's almost like an irony here that it's death that's mortal, whereas the rest of us are immortal. And that monosyllabic line, that choky of death thou shalt die, it's almost like a promise, but not really like a promise, more of a certainty that Donne is only sure of one thing, that they will live forever, and that death, you will be no more, that you will die, that you will cease to be relevant. We wake eternally, and that's the nice collective pronoun that it applies to all of humanity. So Donne is no longer thinking of that judgment day. Instead, he's thinking that no, goodbye death and hello eternal life. So it's definitely a shift away. towards the latter end of Donne's Holy Sonnets. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for making it this far, and I will see you next week.